Welcome to IAS project. In this video, let's talk about economy during later Vedic period. In later Vedic period, the Aryans were practicing mixed farming. Mixed farming simply means cultivation of crops along with raising of livestock. This is very important from the point of view of geography and economy. So, when agriculture is done by raising crops as well as raising livestock, then such type of farming is called as mixed farming. Later Vedic Aryans were also practicing mixed farming. If we talk about the priority of cultivation of crops and raising of livestock, then for later Vedic Aryans, agriculture was the most important occupation. After agriculture, we can say that pastoralism or raising of livestock was the second most important occupation. This is also important because during early Vedic period, pastoralism was the most important occupation and agriculture was the second important. But in the case of later Vedic period, agriculture became the most important and pastoralism was the second most important occupation. Since later Vedic Aryans were practicing agriculture mainly, that is why in later Vedic period, the Aryans led a settled life. This simply means that they settled in settlements and villages and then they practiced agriculture. Previously, what was happening? In early Vedic period, pastoralism was very important. That is why in early Vedic period, Aryans were mostly semi-nomads. But in the case of later Vedic period, life became settled and Aryans mainly lived in villages. Since agriculture was important, Aryans brought more and more land under cultivation. Previously, this land was occupied by forests. That is why they cut down these forests and then they burned these trees. Because of this, this land was now used for agriculture and raising of crops. Such kind of examples are given in later Vedic literature. For example, Shatapatha Brahmana states that the king of Videha, who was called as Videha Mahadeva, he burned down forests that were lying between Saraswati river and Gandak river and then he brought this area under farming. Let's quickly look at the locations of river Saraswati and river Gandak. So on the east we have river Gandak over here and river Saraswati was located somewhere over here. So the land that is located between these two rivers was mainly the land or the area of later Vedic period, and the forests that are existing within this land were cut down using iron tools and then this land was brought under cultivation. You should also remember the name of both these rivers. Gandak has been called as Sadanira, whereas Saraswati has been called as Drishadvati. Saraswati river also has another name. It is nothing but Naditarna. So in the later Vedic literature, it has been stated that cultivation was done by ploughing the field, and for ploughing the field, oxen were used. Later Vedic literature at many points of time notes that these ploughs were drawn by oxen. So this is also important. But initially, the ploughing was done using wooden ploughshare. Initially, iron ploughshare was not there even in later Vedic period. And moreover, we have just seen that later Vedic Aryans were mainly living in the Gangetic plains. And in the Gangetic plains, we know that the soil is alluvial soil. And the ploughing of alluvial soil is very easy. That is why wooden ploughshare was satisfactory if we are talking about cultivating the alluvial soil land. So for the most part of later Vedic period, only wooden ploughshare was used. But by the end of later Vedic period, iron ploughshare was also invented. Please note this point. Iron ploughshare was not existing throughout the later Vedic period. Iron ploughshare was mainly existing towards the end of later Vedic period. For the most part, it was actually the wooden ploughshare that was used in the later Vedic period. Later Vedic literature also says that even Kshatriyas also ploughed the fields in the beginning. However, by the end of later Vedic period, what happened was Brahmanas and Kshatriyas were prohibited from ploughing the field. So this means that Brahmanas and Kshatriyas were not practicing agriculture by the end of later Vedic period. This is also important. However, in the beginning of the later Vedic period, Kshatriyas were ploughing their fields. So Kshatriyas were practicing agriculture in the beginning. We also find some examples for this. For example, we know about Videha kingdom. Videha kingdom was mainly present in the northern part of Bihar, or let's say towards the east of river Gandak. And kingdom of Videha was ruled by King Janaka. And we also know that King Janaka was father of Sita. And the Videha kingdom was very prosperous because of agriculture. Even the King Janaka also did plowing of fields, and he also did agriculture. This has been stated in later Vedic literature as well as in the epic of Ramayana. Moreover, we also know about Balarama. Balarama was basically Krishna's brother, and Balarama's weapon was actually plowshare. Let me show you the photographs of both these. I hope you know about this story about Janaka. This person is Janaka, and one day when he was plowing the field, he actually found goddess Sita. And it is stated in Ramayana that goddess of earth actually gave Sita to Janaka. Similarly, you can see Balarama here, and you can also see his weapon here. The weapon is nothing but plowshare. So the religious aspects and mythological aspects aside, what we can learn from this here is that even Janaka also did plowing of the field, therefore he also did agriculture. And Balarama has the weapon of plowshare. That is why it shows the importance of plowshare for even Kshatriyas during later Vedic period, because Balarama and Janaka were actually Kshatriyas. In the Mahabharata epic, Krishna was belonging to Yadava clan. So he was basically Kshatriya. So since Balarama is having the weapon of plowshare, it indicates that even Kshatriyas also practiced agriculture during later Vedic period. Alright, let's go ahead. So in the beginning, Kshatriyas also practiced agriculture and they also plowed their fields. However, in the later times, plowing was prohibited for Brahmanas as well as Kshatriyas. Another important point we have to note here is that during later Vedic period, cattle were being regularly slaughtered because of Vedic sacrifices. We know that the importance of sacrifices increased in the later Vedic period, and in some of these sacrifices, animals were being slaughtered. Some of these animals were oxes and cows. That is why, because of the slaughter of oxen, what happened was agriculture suffered. Because in agriculture, oxen were needed for driving the plow. But since oxen were slaughtered because of Vedic sacrifices, what happened was agriculture did not develop properly. That is why we can say that agriculture in the later Vedic period was widely prevalent, but it was very primitive. Primitive simply means that it was not properly developed. Widely prevalent simply means that many people were doing agriculture. I hope this point is clear. Agriculture was being done by many people, however, it was not developed because oxen were being slaughtered for the purpose of Vedic sacrifices. During the later Vedic period, material culture also developed greatly. Material culture means food habits improved, clothing habits improved, and also use of material objects like pottery, copper, bronze, iron implements, and all such aspects are considered under material culture. And such material culture during later Vedic period improved greatly. That is why we find very great diversity if we compare the material culture of later Vedic period with the material culture of early Vedic period. So, since Brahmanas and Kshatriyas were not permitted to do agriculture, it was mainly the Vaishyas who were doing the agriculture. And these Vaishyas also supported Brahmanas as well as Kshatriyas. When we say Brahmana, we mainly mean priests. When we say Kshatriyas, we are talking about kings and princes. We know that Vaishyas were the only Varna who were paying taxes and tributes. And these taxes and tributes were not in the form of money. They were mainly in the form of food grains. So, Vaishyas gave food grains to the king. This king gave food grains to other Kshatriyas, and also the king gave some food grains to priests. So, this is how Vaishyas were maintaining and supporting Brahmanas as well as Kshatriyas. So since Vaishyas were maintaining and supporting Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, we can say that Vaishyas were producing food not only for themselves but also for Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. So we can say that Vaishyas were producing food in surplus. Surplus food means they are producing more food than what is required for them. However, we must also note that such kind of surplus food production that was produced by Vaishyas was very small. That is why the most of the common people, or let's say most of the Vis or the Vaishyas, had to practice agriculture. See, there are two ways for producing surplus food. The first way is many people do agriculture, and the second way is few people do agriculture but agriculture is highly developed. So in the case of later Vedic period, agriculture was not highly developed. That is why if few people practiced agriculture, then they won't be able to produce surplus food. So it was many people who were practicing agriculture during later Vedic period. So when many people practice agriculture, what happens is there are few people that are left for doing other jobs. For example, like making pottery or metal artifacts or some other occupations. That is why what happens is when lot of people are engaged in agriculture, urbanization does not happen. So in the later Vedic period also, many people were actually engaged in agriculture. That is why there were villages only. Towns and cities did not develop during this time. You can compare this situation with Indian villages also. In the case of Indian villages, mostly people are engaged in agriculture. They are not engaged in trade or industrial activities. That is why those places remain as villages. If those people move from agriculture into trade and let's say other industrial jobs, then what happens is towns and cities get developed. So in the case of later Vedic period, villages did not develop into towns and cities mainly because many people had to do agriculture because the agriculture was not developed properly. But by the end of later Vedic period, what happened was iron plowshare started to be used. Moreover, improved types of other farm implements and tools also started to be used. That is why after later Vedic period ended, that is in the Mahajanapada period, agriculture was more developed compared to later Vedic period, mainly because of iron plowshare and improved type of tools and farm implements. I hope this is clear. We know that in the Rig Vedic period, it was mainly the barley that was the most important crop for the Rig Vedic Aryans. Even in the later Vedic period, barley continued to be grown. However, what happened was wheat and rice actually became chief crops of later Vedic Aryans. Wheat has been called as Goduma in the Vedic literature and rice has been called as Vrihi. Other than barley, wheat and rice, later Vedic Aryans also produced different kinds of lentils. We already discussed lentils, pulses and legumes in our lectures previously. So later Vedic Aryans mainly consumed wheat and rice. Other than wheat and rice, they also consumed barley. So apart from these three food grains, they also produced lentils. Lentils are basically lens-shaped pulses. So in the later Vedic period, particularly if we talk about Punjab and Western Uttar Pradesh area, then in these areas, people were mainly consuming wheat. Even today in Punjab, people mostly consume wheat. At the same time, in the Ganga Yamuna Doab region, rice was being grown by the Aryans for the first time here. So before Aryans, in the Ganga Yamuna Doab, rice was not grown. It was the Aryans who grew rice for the first time in the Ganga Yamuna Doab. Also, the later Vedic Aryans knew about irrigation system as well as using manure for agriculture. So we can say that in terms of usage of irrigation as well as manure for agriculture, it was developed. However, overall agriculture was not developed during later Vedic period. It was very primitive, but it was practiced by many people. That is why Vaishyas were able to produce a small amount of surplus who they gave it to king, and that king gave it to other tribesmen, and also kings gave some food grains to Brahmanas. If we talk about the ownership of the land, then most of the land was actually owned by the entire clan. However, the property rights of Grihapati were also recognized. It means that father in the family was having certain amount of area or property under his name. And when that father died, what happened was it was transferred to the eldest son. We already talked about primogeniture system of inheritance, which means that the eldest son got the inheritance of father. Father mainly means Grihapati, who is nothing but the head of the household in the Aryan culture. Please like and subscribe. You can download this presentation from our Telegram channel. The name of the channel is IAS Project. The link for this channel has been given in the description section below. Thank you.